New figures recorded by many of the UK's largest police forces show the number of anti-Semitic hate crimes have jumped sharply following the outbreak of the Hamas-Israel conflict on October the 7th. Just yesterday, Stamford Hill's Jewish community was rocked by an alleged racist attack, and anti-Semitic graffiti was scrawled on a bus stop. And pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted Boxing Day sales in London, forcing shops to close, whilst the north of the capital has seen a series of anti-Semitic incidents over the past few weeks. Well, joining us now to discuss this is the chairman of the National Jewish Association, Gary Mond. Gary, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Hope you're having a lovely festive period. We've seen a boom in anti-Semitism since the war broke out in Gaza, 1,350% in London in the following 2 weeks, showing no signs of this going away. Can you tell us how concerned the Jewish community are by this?
I think the Jewish community has become very fearful since October the 7th, since we started to see a spike in Jew-hating incidents. And by the way, I call them Jew-hating rather than pro-Palestinian, because that's what they actually are. If people were actually supporting the Palestinians, they would have demonstrated when tens of thousands of them were massacred by Bashar Assad's regime in Syria. But no, it's only now that they're demonstrating, and they are essentially Jew-haters. And yes, there's tremendous concern in the Jewish community in the UK at present.
And Gary, is a part of this a feeling? There was a poll recently saying that like 60% of the Jewish community in Britain don't feel that the police are on their side. We've seen two-tier policing at protests where the Palestinian mob are allowed to pretty much do what they want, and yet a gentleman with an Israeli flag at Trafalgar Square was told to remove it. And is that part of the problem? You don't feel that the police have got the back of the Jewish community?
I think that the police are perceived as doing their best, but there is certainly an element of a feeling of that they're not actually doing as much as they could do. And one has to question whether they've got the resources they need to do everything. Some Jews in the Jewish community certainly feel there's an element of bias, that they're taking action against pro-Israeli demonstrators and taking far less action against the Jew-hating elements. Indeed, there was an incident some weeks ago when a group of pro-Israel Christians wanted to hold a march and were essentially discouraged from doing so by the police, and it had to be rescheduled.
And Gary, there's also been alarming incidents of the Jewish community saying they have lost faith in the media, particularly the BBC, who seem to be for example, they weren't happy about calling Hamas terrorists. It took quite a lot of provocation for them to get around to that. And yet they always seem to take a pro-Hamas viewpoint on things like hospital bombings. Is that part of the problem? There's a mindset that pervades the media, which seems anti-Semitic.
It most definitely is part of the problem. The BBC is not seen to be supportive of Israel at all. It never has been. This is not new, but it's been accelerated during the period since the 7th of October. My organisation, the National Jewish Assembly, organised a demonstration outside the BBC, protesting against their bias and protesting against their refusal to actually identify Hamas as terrorists, which the government themselves did identify them in 2021 and designated them a terrorist organisation.
And Gary,
the BBC, however, unprepared to do so.
And Gary, what's been particularly concerning and heartbreaking for anybody looking on, let alone the Jewish community, are stories of Jewish children too afraid to wear the insignia on their blazers to go to school, of schools themselves being targeted by vandalism. This is the next level. To target children seems utterly abhorrent.
It is utterly abhorrent, as you say, but it's all part and parcel of the same thing. I don't know whether the police have sufficient powers to take action. We saw also the incident in East London when there was a demonstration led by allegedly pro-Palestinians outside a school because a Palestinian child had been actually wearing political insignia and calling for free Palestine. And that is something that the police have been trying to crack down on and need to crack down on. much more effectively. And if they haven't got the powers to do so, then legislation needs to be changed to make sure they do have the powers to do so. And it's irrelevant whether it's a Conservative government or a Labour government in this matter. If the Jewish population wants to feel comfortable living in this country, we need to see action taken. The police need to take action, and if they say they can't take action for various legal reasons, then they need to be given the legal powers to do so and protect the Jewish community.
OK, Gary Mond, Chairman of the National Jewish Association, thank you very much for joining us from New York, and I wish you a peaceful 2024.